Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. After running through the news you need to know about, we run you through the fan Q&A where we answer fans' questions. So, let's get into the news you need to know about, even though there's not that much news you need to know about because it is the dead period of the league year. Let's get into this first news story. If you didn't know, we're going to run you through one thing here, and then we're going to talk about something we did talk about in last week's episode, but there's a little bit of new news on it, so let's get into it. So if you missed last week's episode, just to recap this, Albert Wilson and Allen Hurns, if you haven't heard, are fully back and healthy. They participated in voluntary OTAs. They're going to participate in training camp in a very stacked receiving battle, whoever's going to make the team. I mean, there's so many really talented players at that position that kind of fit their very specific niche on the team. So it's going to be really awesome to see who makes the final cut. There's a lot of young talent there. There's some good veteran talent there. We'll see what ends up happening. So if you're wondering about Albert Wilson and Allen Hurns, they're fully back, healthy, ready to go. And we talked about this a lot on last week's episode, but let's get into it again because we got a little bit of news on this. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. Dolphins are hesitant to give Xavien Howard a new deal. This is something that you've heard about a million times. And the reason they're hesitant is because they just signed, and this comes from Cameron Wolfe of ESPN.com. The reason the Dolphins are hesitant to give X a new deal, and all X wants is to be the highest paid corner on the team. This is the most egomaniac stuff I have ever read in my life. On both sides, from X's side and from the Dolphins side. The only reason the Dolphins are not giving him the extension, according to Cameron Wolfe of ESPN, is because they just signed him to a new deal. That's the whole thing. That's what Brian Flores said in his press conference. Listen, he called it a unique situation. Those were his words. He just signed a new deal. He's not getting paid that much less than Byron Jones. I mean, it's literally peanuts. Okay? And so they're hesitant to give him a new deal because it's like, we just gave you a new deal. So that's the only reason they're not giving him a new deal. Not because they can't, not because they don't have enough money, because they're going to have a ton of cap space next year. And like I said, it's not that much money. It's not that much of a bump, pay raise. It's like, it's not that big of a deal. Just give him his money. And then on X's side, this is frustrating because this could potentially lose us one of the best players in the league. And it's over really nothing. Over penny, not in this fantasy world of millions of dollars, it's pennies. And on X's side, he just wants to be the highest paid corner on the team. Like it actually matters that much. He's not even getting paid that much less than Byron. He signed a 5-year, $75 million deal, which honestly that's a lot of money. But in today's world of sports, never sign a 5-year deal. Sign a 2 to 3 year deal. At the very most. Unless you're a quarterback and you're getting paid hundreds of millions of dollars. Don't. And especially since you're a corner, you're not getting that much commercials and deals. It's not like you're getting sponsorships on the side like a quarterback would. Never sign a 5-year deal if you're an athlete that plays any other position than quarterback in the NFL. I don't understand why players do that. You can get paid way more money signing 2 and 3 year deals, hitting the market. The cap raises every year. You're going to get paid and the market resets constantly. I don't understand, if you're a player, why you would sign almost a full decade deal, especially at the cornerback position. And players complain about guaranteed money all the time. We see it in the NBA, and with LeBron James especially, since he is such a great player, and if you are a great athlete and a great player, you can constantly reset the market and constantly get paid more. You just have to bet on yourself. Now, football is a way more violent sport. We get that. So you got to kind of take your guaranteed money where you can. That's what we hear all the time. But you can still get your guaranteed money on a 3-year deal. 4 years is too much in my opinion. 3 years is probably as far as I think any player should go in today's league. And just get your guaranteed money. And again, on X's side, he just wants to be the highest paid player in the world. This is the most frustrating and stupid dispute I have ever seen between an organization and a player. And we've seen it many times before, and we're seeing it this offseason. I mean, players are leaving for the dumbest reasons, and so are these organizations, because their egos are so big. It's like, can we just get past this? He's one of the best players at his position, okay? Which is a position that is vital to the defense that Brian runs, okay? So, again, I don't want to spend another 10 minutes on this topic. We talked about it a ton last week. You know, at the end of the day, this is the dumbest argument and dispute possible, and I hope it gets settled. If I was Brian or Chris, I'd be like, listen, this guy has a very special talent that not many people in the history of the league have, where he creates a ton of turnovers, and he's not Asante Samuel, he's not D'Angelo Hall, or Marcus Peters, where he's just baiting for picks, and he's not really a good coverage guy, you know, where he's going to give up a touchdown on a double move constantly. X is not that guy. He's a pure cover corner and man-to-man coverage. Very sound, not breaking up the defense, looking for picks. He just gets them because he's got great hands. He gets his head around, great technique, all of it. He's a great player. So he's a special, one-of-a-kind guy in that regard. It's almost like Rod Woodson, where he's a great cover guy and he gives you great turnover numbers. I mean, you look at people like Stephon Gilmore and even other people in the history of the league that are great cover guys that don't put up the pick numbers that X does. And like I said, X isn't, you know, going out of the realm of the defense just to, you know, stack his numbers up. He's getting his numbers how they would naturally come to a great player like that. So hopefully they can just figure it out. It's just frustrating. I don't want to lose, you know, as a fan, make the team worse over something so ridiculous. Let's get into this next news story. I think, speaking of extensions, Mike Gesicki, not on the Dolphins' radar. Mike Gesicki extension not on the Dolphins' radar. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. Mike Gesicki broke through with a solid third season. Only 3 tight ends receiving yardage outputs exceeded his 2020 production, giving him the former second-round pick some momentum going into his contract year. Obviously, the Dolphins have already extended Jerome Baker and Jason Sanders in recent memory. But Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald notes that the team does not have Gesicki extension on their radar going into training camp. So I don't really think this means anything. There's a lot going on right now. I mean, with the Xavien Howard thing, they just got done with Jerome Baker. And sometimes reports like this are wrong. I'm sure those two have had some sort of conversations. And, you know, when you look at Mike Gesicki, he's a great player. One of the best at his position. One of the best young talents at his position. Probably the best young talent. Him and Mark Andrews. You know, I think when you look at Mike Gesicki, and especially last year, I think his year could have been better. And I don't think people really understand. He was so much better his third year than even his second year. Like, it was a big, big difference. Like, he's made giant leaps in each of his seasons that he's been a Dolphin. He made the biggest one last year. I mean, he really, really did. He's really starting to come into his own. And he could have had even a better year last year if the quarterback play was a little bit more consistent. I think he could have played and put up even bigger numbers if Fitz never left the lineup. And that was a little bit more consistent. I know people don't want to hear that, but Tua's defense of that, Mike was him and Lynn Bowden were his favorite targets his rookie year. And towards the end of last year, of last season, he really started getting a rapport with him. It was a little bit inconsistent. You know, they had a great rapport in the Bengals game. They had a really good rapport in the Cardinals game for a big completion. You know, they had a great one in the Chiefs game. He hit him on a couple tough throws. So those two are kind of coming around. But I think if Gesicki had a little bit more consistency at that position, he would have had even better numbers than he did. And he had a great year, but his talent, like his understanding, I think it wasn't, obviously it's not his physical ability, but his, like I said, just his jump from year 1 to year 2 to year 3, I think is a little bit underrated. He really is coming into his own and just really being really good at just the game of football in the NFL. Not just having a great athleticism and putting up highlight plays here and there. You can really see that he's going to be a consistently good tight end for the rest of his career at his position. So I think he's well worthy of the extension. I think he's going to put even better numbers up this year. I really do believe that, especially with the speed on the outside. He's going to really be able to work the middle of the field a lot easier. He's not going to get double teamed as much. Since, we're going to try to establish this run game in this Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan offense that Stoodsville's going to install him a run game, he's going to be open in more play action stuff. It's going to be easier on him to play that position. You see all the great tight ends in the league right now, except Travis Kelce, which is a huge exception because what they're doing in Kansas City is ridiculous. But if you think about Mark Andrews, George Kittle, they all have great run games. And it helps a tight end to put up big numbers. And he's a very talented one, so he fits perfectly into what we want to do. Since we're going, obviously George Godsey, who was the tight ends coach, is taking over as the pass coordinator. From everything that we've heard, he's going to be running a more New England passing game, which benefits Gesicki. We've seen what tight ends do in that offense. It's very versatile, and it's very tight end friendly. So everything, especially going into a contract year, is setting up in Gesicki's favor. Tua's coming off of last year. They started getting a rapport at the end of last year. He's going to be better this year. So everything's pointing in the right direction for Gesicki. He's going to have a big year. He's, like I said, he's improved every single year. So just because we're not discussing anything now, I fully expect him to be extended and being a top priority for the Dolphins this upcoming season. If not, before the season even ends, during the season, I can see them getting something done. So I'm expecting big things from him, and I'm very excited to see where he goes. And, Mike has some flaws, I don't think he'll ever be Travis Kelce. He needs to get better at getting in and out of routes. He takes very long strides. He's kind of slow coming out of breaks. I think that's the biggest criticism of his game. If he can just kind of clean that up in the passing game, he'll be unstoppable. And the run game is going to really help him with that. And the play action game is going to really help him with that. Because it's going to be easier just to get vertical. So all of those things, I think, are going to point to him having a big year. And coming back. And I think to go back on my point earlier about him, he might not ever beat Travis Kelce, but I could easily, and he is right now, I think I could easily see him being a top 5 tight end for the next 4 to 5 years, for sure. And that's definitely good enough. But if he can clean that part of his game up, then he can be the best tight end in football. But that's kind of the thing that's holding him back from that. He takes really long strides, and like I said, he's a little slow coming in and out of breaks. He's not as sudden as those other guys to be that kind of dominant receiving threat. But he can be that. And he is already that, but I'm saying if he wants to be the best tight end in the league, be like a top 25 player, or, the best in the league at his position, that's definitely the thing that's standing in his way of that. Because you don't have to block anymore to be the best tight end in football. Travis Kelce doesn't block at all. So, that's it for the news. We have some other news. That's not it for the news. We have this next 2 news stories. This next news story comes from Bleacher Report. N'Keal Harry requests a trade. I saw an article saying, should the Dolphins trade? This isn't easy. We don't even have to talk about this for very long. No. I wouldn't even give up a 7th round pick for him. And why you would add? Why? Why wouldn't I? The receiving core is stacked. Unless he is like DeAndre Hopkins, okay, or something like that, I wouldn't even consider trading for a receiver, okay? Because of how There are so many things they have to figure out at that position. They have so much young talent at that position that they're still developing. It would make zero sense to trade for N'Keal Harry and try to develop him into something. It's like we have so many guys that we're already doing that with Lynn Bowden and Preston Williams that are still developing, that have a lot of talent. It just wouldn't make any sense for N'Keal Harry to be on the team. So that's an easy no. And I think everybody understands why. Not only that, but he hasn't looked good. Was he in New England 2 years or a year? He hasn't looked good at all in those 2 years. Oh, yeah, he's been in 2 years because his rookie year was with Tom. So he hasn't looked good at all. He's not. I mean, you want to talk about not being able to get in and out of breaks. I mean, N'Keal Harry is like the poster child for that. He's a possession receiver. He's a 50-50 ball guy. He's a physical receiver, and he's not very good at that. So that's a no. Nothing really else to talk about. I don't even want to. I mean, N'Keal Harry, I don't know what else to say to that. That's just. I mean, we have nothing to talk about, so that's the reason I even put that in the show. It's kind of a ridiculous question. Let's move on. This is the last thing. It's the last news story of the day. And then we'll get into the fan Q&A where we answer fans' questions. If Xavien Howard is traded, and I've said this before and I stand by it, the only way I would package him in a deal is if it was for a quarterback, like Aaron Rodgers or Deshaun Watson. And I still believe that. But let's put that aside for the sake of not having a ton of to talk about today. What would be great trades for Xavien Howard? I think you can only trade him for an offensive player or pieces. I think this team is ready to win now, and we've seen the formula of surrounding your young quarterback with as much talent as you possibly can, trying to make him look as good as you can and make his job as easy as you can. And that's kind of the theme I'm going with for these trades. So I have two teams that I think would be interesting trades for X, even though I don't think this is, in reality, the greatest outcome. I think you should save X, at the very least, for it to be a piece in a deal for one of those quarterbacks. But, like I said, we're setting that aside for the sake of this discussion. So let's go over the first trade. The first trade with the Dallas Cowboys. In a package deal for Ezekiel Elliott and Zach Martin. Now, the Cowboys need a lot of help on defense. That's the weakest part of their team. They could stand to go without some offensive weapons. And I thought maybe they would trade. A good trade, I think, would be those two. And it might not be the most realistic trade because Zach Martin might be a step too far. I think they would easily trade Ezekiel Elliott. He's not coming off the greatest year. He had a lot of fumbling issues. He was on a bad team. So I still saw a lot there. He's still good in the passing game. He's still a good, powerful runner and could definitely help this offense out in a lot of different ways. And would produce a lot of yards from scrimmage. If they're not willing to give us Zach Martin, because the dude is one of the best players at his position of the last decade, and I could see how that would not be a realistic deal. They could package Zeke and Tony Pollard. I think that would be a fantastic trade, and really help the team with a really good backfield at that point. Tony Pollard is an up-and-coming player, very good, very home run hitter. Would be a nice compliment to Zeke and Myles Gaskin in the backfield. That would be a three-headed monster of a backfield and would help out Tua a lot. So I like that. The idea of it. If they wouldn't be willing us to give us Zach Martin and Zeke, I would go for Pollard and Zeke, and I think that would help the team out a lot. The other trade that I was thinking about that would be a cool trade that, to be honest with you, might be a little bit much, but I think it would be a fun one, is the Jacksonville Jaguars. X for James Robinson and C.J. Henderson, I think would be a fun trade. Obviously, C.J. didn't really live up, but he's a young player and he's a corner, so things take time. But he has a ton of athleticism and a ton of potential to be a great player, and he fits the scheme. All he did in Florida was play man coverage. So, if they were willing to exchange X who's one of the top players in the league, for James Robinson, who obviously was a great find for the Jaguars, an undrafted player who fits today's game perfectly. He's a great runner. He runs with power. He has great ability in the open field as well. He's not just a power runner. He can score a 50-yard touchdown easily. And he's a great receiving back. So you're getting a lot of production there. And I've said this a million times. The running backs in today's game have to be able to play in the passing game, whether that's in pass protection or they're putting up numbers in the passing game. They have to. And I think that's what makes a great running back in today's game. And he's a perfect example of that. And I think would be a fantastic piece in a young core. You know, you would be getting two pretty young players with high upside. And that would be kind of a steal of a trade for the Dolphins, to be honest with you. If they were able to... when I say steal, I mean... I wouldn't make this trade. Like I said, I would only trade X for... But if they found themselves in this terrible situation where this was the only outcome, it's not a terrible outcome to get C.J. Henderson and James Robinson in a trade. I mean, those are two young, really good players who have a lot of upside. I don't know if the Jaguars would make that deal. Maybe you could get, and maybe you would have to give them like a second round pick with that. But if you can make that deal, that would be a pretty good outcome at the end of the day. You get a young corner that you can develop on a rookie deal, and you get a really good young running back also on a rookie deal, and that would be a fantastic trade. So let's move on to the fan Q&A, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get into the fan Q&A. I don't know what else I was going to say right there. This first question comes from SM. He says, has the lack of progress with the Xavien Howard standoff started to worry you? No, because everybody's on vacation right now. The league's almost here. Training camp's almost here. Everybody's just chilling, relaxing. I don't think, maybe if like 4 or 5 days, a little bit less before training camp, we'll get a little bit more news on it. We got a news report. It's probably not true that, X might still show up to training camp. We'll see. Who knows? We'll just have to sit back and relax and, enjoy whatever happens. This next question comes from KC Fanatic. He says, on offense, we are a team built on speed and finesse. On offense, okay. Therefore, I'm concerned about games played in our Florida's tropical rainy weather and cold city away games. Bad weather favors teams with a good running game like Denver or Tennessee. Your thoughts? I mean, Tennessee, in December, it's a southern state. It's not that bad. It's not like in New York or Buffalo, so I wouldn't worry about Tennessee. Denver and places like that, yeah, like a Midwest, northern state, of course you would worry about that. But that's, even if you had a good run game, all of those things, like, playing in Denver is tough anyway, and even in New England, like, even if you have a good run game, it's going to be tough to win up there. But I completely agree with you, Casey. Like, anytime you can have a great run game to lean on, it helps your offense in any type of scenario. And it's a great compliment for the Florida weather in Miami because you wear teams down easier. So, I would disagree with the finesse thing. I honestly think the thing that hurt last year with some of the run game stuff was we were a little bit too finesse in our scheme. Solomon Kinley and Robert Hunt are powerful run game guys that fit more of a power scheme. So I think our offensive line is more than capable of being a physical run game. I don't know if our running backs fit that. Like, Dokes is probably the only one that fits that. Malcolm Brown is kind of a deceiver. He reminds me a lot of Mike Davis in a way where it's like, dude, what do you do well? Like, he's a fat kind of running back, like a CJ Anderson, Mike Tolbert looking dude, Michael Turner without the athleticism. It's like, I don't know what, like, I'm not excited about him at all. I don't like his game. There's not really, Dokes has the potential to be that, like more of a power runner. Ahmed and Gaskin are clearly not that. So, to be honest with you, to answer your question, Casey, it wouldn't be that the offensive line couldn't do it. and the scheme is there. I mean, if we're going to run a Shanahan-McVay offense, there is some power running in there. It's more of a versatile type of running game. It's kind of a little bit of both. Maybe Shanahan's more than McVay's. McVay is more a little bit more streamlined than that. But like I said, I think I would worry about the personnel on the running back side more than the offensive line, because I do think the offensive line is capable of being a physical offensive line. And you can see that's what kind of Brian wants. More of a run game presence and more of a play action type, new age type of an offense, and I think that's what we're going to see this year. Just to reiterate, so you said on offense we were a team built on speed and finesse, therefore I'm concerned about games played in North Florida. Like I said, I think it's more of the running back thing than anything. But I think the team's capable of it, especially if they make a move for like Le'Veon Bell, if they get Zeke in a hypothetical trade, someone like James Robinson, if they get something like that, then they can easily beat that and lean on the run game and have kind of like someone who can wear out a defense in that way. But it's more so the running backs than it is the offensive line. This next question comes from SM. He says, when will the Dolphins... He says, when will the Dolphins have stability with the coaching staff? I mean, at what point will our OC and DC stay more than a year? I think this year. I mean, Boyer's coming back for a second year. So yeah. And I think the OCs will stay. I mean, we're doing I don't think they'll leave us after this year. This next question comes from... I think that's why one of the reasons Brian did what he did. This next question comes... And one thing I want to say about the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball, I love how he's hiring younger guys and not some veteran coach. And you've seen a mass exodus of veteran coaches who are coordinators. Like, what's his name? I mean, there's been a lot of them that have just... Like, Dean Pease. Like, there's been a lot of guys that have, Mike Pettin... even Romeo Cannell to a certain extent, I don't know if he landed on his feet or not. Like, there's a lot of guys that are older that don't really get it anymore. And, why am I drawing a blank on our offensive coordinator last year? I'm literally drawing a blank on it. You guys know who I'm talking about last year. I don't know why I can't remember his name. I like how Brian went younger to run more of a more modern offense. I mean, New England is the king of that. I mean, they literally have one of the younger staffs in the league. I mean, Josh McDaniels is young. I think O.J. Mayo is their defensive coordinator, former middle linebacker for them, who's young. So I love how he went younger at that position instead of hiring a veteran guy. But I do think they will stay for another year after this year. I don't think you have to worry about that anymore. This next question comes from SM. He says, under more pressure this season, Tua or Coach Flores? Tua. I've said this a million times. If this team doesn't reach the expectations, then it's not Brian's fault. It would be the quarterback's fault. He runs the team beautifully. He runs the organization beautifully. He's well respected around the league. This is the most respected Dolphins organization in the last 20 years. We've heard that from multiple people around the league. He's put this team in great positions. The GM is a wizard at getting first-round picks. He's a great, great coach and a great leader from everything that we've heard. It would not be his fault. It would be the quarterback's fault. So I would say Tua. This next question comes from Mark. He says, do you think we improve or regress? What will we be ranked defensively and offensively? Or will Flores be on the hot seat if we have a bad season? This is a make or break year for Tua. It's not going to be a bad season no matter what. So no matter what happens, unless Tua plays awful, it's not going to be a bad season. And it wouldn't be Brian's fault either. We're going to improve defensively. Our defense is better than it was last year. Offensively, we're better than we were last year, too, and we won 10 games last year. It really just comes down to the quarterback. That's a great question, though. Mark. This next question comes from SM. He says, any interest in trading for N'Keal Harry? Rumor has it he's officially asked for a trade out of New England. No, there is no interest in that. This next question comes from Steven. He says, let me restart. This question comes from Steven. He says, given how fast Flores and Greer have moved on from other underperforming players such as Shaq Lawson, Kyle Van Noy, Eric Flowers, Matt Breida, Jordan Howard, do you think if Tua doesn't progress and make a big jump this season, will the front office move on via trade to have him replaced, maybe for Watson, Russell Wilson, or someone else? Absolutely. And we've heard from other sources, like we discussed on last week's episode, that if the Deshaun Watson situation presents itself this year, then that deal will be done, or they'll at least try to get it done. So they understand what they have as a roster. And I mean, dude, first of all, if you compare Brian Flores up with a 25-year-old top 5 quarterback for the next 15 years, I mean, that's deadly, dude. That's deadly. So, yeah, I mean, I absolutely think that would be the case. And it might happen this year. Steven goes on to say, to me, it feels like a make or break year for Tua and his future here. I do love that this staff does make moves on players quickly if they aren't working out, especially right now with our window of opportunity opening up. I mean, the window is open. And I completely agree with that. And, you know, I hope that ownership understands that. And I think he does. He's a pretty loyal owner. I mean, he was going to give Adam Gase another year. Adam Gase is the one who left the team, the Dolphins. He didn't want to rebuild. He didn't want to go with the Chris Greer plan. And he moved on to the Jets, which is hilarious. I mean, I love how he thought he could leave and go somewhere else immediately, and then he had to settle for the New York job, which was awful. But thank God it happened because we wouldn't have Brian Flores. So, yeah, but I completely agree. All the pressure is on Tua. A lot of questions about that in this comment section. That, you know, I mean, Brian is my favorite Dolphin member right now, and it's not even close. Like, I love what he's done with the team. And you know what? I've never been so wrong about something when it comes to this team. And I'm so, like, happy that I was. Chris really did a great job, and Steven did a great job. Steven Ross did a great job of picking him. You know, at the time, we all thought, oh, he's just another New England guy who's reaping the rewards of the success around him. It's not necessarily his individual talent. And obviously, he's proved that wrong. This next question comes from Fantasy Fan. He says, with the season right ahead of us, what players or player needs the most reps in camp and in preseason to show their worth? Man, I mean, you know, that's a tough question from Fantasy Fan. I mean, I would say mostly the receivers have, like, Preston Williams. Those guys have the most to prove. Tua, I mean, but he's going to get all the reps. He's the young quarterback of the team. So, honestly, the guys that I would think need it are going to get it. And the guys that have to show the most in preseason would be the receivers, like Allen Hurns, Albert Wilson, Preston Williams, Lynn Bowden, Jakeem Grant. All of those guys are the guys that need to show up. So yeah, I would say those guys. I'm so excited to watch this team. I was thinking about the defense side of the ball when I was saying that. Like, is there anybody on defense that needs to do that? Not really. I mean, Holland, Brandon Jones, all of those guys have a place on this team for the future. Eric Rowe, Jason McCourty, like, those guys are going to make the team. So, and they make the defense. I mean, I cannot wait to see this defense play. And apparently Holland is killing it in practice. So, or was killing it in practice. So, I'm very excited. Very excited. But to answer your question, fantasy fan, I would say the receivers are the guys that need that the most. This next question comes from Ahmed. He says, I must say that last week's podcast was the most balanced critique and excellent podcast I have heard on this channel. Kudos to you. I appreciate that, Ahmed. He says, why do you think Raekwon Davis is more often in the news for his potential growth, while Wilkins is more or less an afterthought? Do you believe Wilkins can be a superstar or another adequate pick for the team whose career may go the way of Ja'Wuan James? What do you make of the team not being able to identify superstars and drafts? Well, I mean, they have been able to do that. It's just those guys kind of tend to leave, unfortunately. But what is the question? I disagree. I mean, with superstars, they hit on Minka, obviously, but we all know how that ended. To be honest with you, we have to really wait with the Chris Greer thing. I think, especially this year's class, I think has the most potential for that in terms of like superstars. Like Igbenogany, Austin Jackson could be a pretty good player. I think he's got a high upside. Tua could still be a superstar. So the rebuild with Chris and Brian just started. We have to give it time. I think Christian Wilkins is really well respected around the league as a good player. Is he a great player yet? I think he's not quite there yet, but he's getting there. So I think you have to be a little bit more patient. The rebuild just started, so in terms of labeling some of these guys superstars, I think it's we have to wait a little bit. X is a superstar. Byron Jones, if he's healthy, is a superstar, but that's from free agency. I think Brandon Jones. There's a lot of young guys that can have potential to be really, really good. So we just have to wait. I just won't call them superstars yet. But I think Raekwon Davis. I don't know. Honestly, Brian was. That was a Brian Flores pick. He was ecstatic when we got him and he fell to us. A lot of people around the league really like him. He was voted to the all-rookie team. He's got a lot of potential. They're moving him to defensive end. So, I don't know. I think both players have great futures, bright futures. I think Christian can still get to that place where he is like a great player. I don't think the book is closed on that yet. So I think to answer your question on it, I think a lot of it is just a lot of these guys are really young. And I can't. Speaking on like the Philbin era and all that other stuff, it's not fair to the team. To this regime. This next question comes from, the rest of his question says, they're becoming known for developing undrafted and low drafted talent, but we haven't heard of any superstars on the team besides X. Even that is debatable. I don't know why that would be debatable. There was a report about Flores being on the hot seat, but I have to question Greer's ability to. I never read anything about Brian being on the hot seat. And whoever said that needs. Literally that's that I've never been so upset hearing news. Brian should not even be close to being on the hot seat. Xavien Howard is a superstar. He is he's putting up historic numbers. Like, he has more picks than Deion Sanders did. And he's missed games. He's on a historic pace for interceptions. Like, I disagree with. I think X is definitely a superstar, but he was a first team All Pro player this year or last year. He was third in voting in Defensive Player of the Year, so yes, the dude is a superstar. But Brian Flores, I don't know anything about that. The hot seat thing, I haven't heard anything about that. Y'all got to start linking stuff in the dang comment. Like, that's a big, deal. I haven't heard anything about that, but, I think to answer your question, and it's a great question, and it's a fair question. I think a lot of this stuff it's kind of a wait and see. A lot of these guys are really young that come from this era. Dude, Brian has only been here 2 years. In the first year he was here, it was a disaster of a roster. So, you guys, I don't know why. It's like, he just won 10 games. Like, Lord, why is he on the hot seat? I don't know where that's coming from. This next question comes from Edward. He says, "Sir, how long do you think that Coach Brian will be on Miami Dolphins?" Lord, a lot of people are wondering about this. Coach Flo will be on the Miami Dolphins coach, and thank you for answering our questions. Unlike others, they don't when they get big. Thank you for your work. I appreciate that, Edward. I think Brian will be the coach as long as he's here. I mean, as long as he wants to be. The only thing that could stand in, it's really the quarterback position that is the question mark right now. If the quarterback position gets worked out, he'll be the coach for as long as he wants to be. I think he's that good. To answer your question, Edward. This next question comes from Richard. He says all the NFL magazines, ESPN, and NFL Network have the Dolphins going to be third place in the AFC East. This is not the 2008 Dolphins that finished 7-9 in 2009. This defense is better. The offensive line is way better. The 2019 was better at running back with Ricky Williams and Ronnie Brown. If it wasn't for Chad Pennington, the 2008 Dolphins wouldn't have made the playoffs. The national media does not give the Dolphins respect. Who cares? I don't care. It's mostly uneducated morons. They look at the New England logo and they're like, oh, well, they got to be better than the Dolphins, and they put them over us. That's what happens. That's literally what happens. The Bills, that's an argument. The Bills are good. We know that. They have the best quarterback in the division. We get that. We understand that. I'm not going to say, I mean, that's just, but New England, we have a better team than they do, so I don't understand that. This next question comes from Mystical Child. He says, that's an interesting name. Mystical Child. He says, I listen. Sorry, your name just threw me off. He says, I listened to the podcast for a few months now, and I'm really enjoying it. In my opinion, I don't agree with your view on Howard in that situation. Let's not forget. Oh, thank you for saying you enjoy it, by the way. Oh, Lord, this is a long one. I appreciate you saying that. He goes on to say, let's not forget, if it was Howard and John Brown blew past in that Week 2 game against the Bills when Brown and Josh Allen connected on that long bomb. I don't know. I'll have to go back and look at that. I think there was definitely some miscommunication on that play. I would have to go back and look at it. But you are right. Howard was on that side of the field. He says, but my opinion on this, we gave Howard a new contract. He agreed to it. Done deal. Now after one good season into it, he wants to hold out for more money. Yeah, he had a great year last year, but that's why we paid him. That's what we paid him to do. That's what Mystical Child said. A friend of mine and I were talking yesterday, and we brought up Aaron Rodgers. He asked my opinion, and I told him Aaron won't hold out, and here's why. Guys/teams have a very small window to win a Super Bowl. Some guys never even get the chance in their entire career. The guys in Green Bay have that opportunity right now. Rodgers is a true leader and winner. He won't rob those guys of that chance because of his personal feelings. He'll be there. That's an interesting take on that. He says, he goes on to say, if Howard was a true winner/leader, he wouldn't put personal beef with the organization in the way of being in camp, not being a distraction, and help this team win a championship. That they are built for making a run right now, and maybe for the next 3 to 5 years. If he feels like he deserves more money, then he shouldn't have said that before he signed his current contract. He should have said that before he signed his current contract. He goes on to say, did he agree to the deal thinking he wasn't going to be that good? If I was management, and hear me out, I would give Howard the opportunity to show up to camp and not give him any more money right now. If he decides to hold out, I would trade him for either Deshaun Watson or multiple picks, including a first. The catch would be whoever is trading for Howard takes on his full contract. I would take the money, let Parker and Gesicki go after this year, and take all that money and get to a 2 shiny new toys for next year and Allen Robinson and Devontae Adams. Because with the money we would save on Parker, Gesicki, and Howard, in that scenario, we could afford at least 2 really good receivers, not to mention Fuller's $10 million deal will be off the books next year as well. Okay, well, man, there's a lot to really talk about there. Okay, you make a great point, Mystical Child, a fantastic point. And my argument is, And you make a great argument. I mean, I understand that. But to be honest with you, the ego thing and the pettiness is on both sides. I mean, you have one of the best players at his position who, like, give him the $1 million to $2 million more, and the report came out that he just wants to be the highest paid. And again, it's silly sound. It's the whole thing is silly and ridiculous. The whole thing is. And I don't even want to get off to another tangent about how people are literally getting upset and yelling about athletes making, they're making $15, $20, $30 million, right? $70 million, $80, $90, $100 million. And they're literally arguing that they should be getting paid more because owners get paid a lot of money. And people, it's a whole nother argument I don't even want to get into. It makes me upset every time, though. It's ridiculous. It's silly. It's actually kind of disrespectful in a way, as us as fans watching the sport. Not all of us are that fortunate, and to kind of, argue about that and be upset about that on live television. It's like, who wants to watch that? I don't want to watch it. But anyway, that's a different argument for a different time. The whole thing is silly and ridiculous, is my point. And to be honest with you, if I was in that organization, I don't want to have to repeat myself. I just said it in the podcast. I would just, listen, who's your extra $2 million? Hopefully that makes you happy. We just want you to be on the team. Your services are amazing and greatly needed on this franchise. I mean, Lord of mercy. You're one of the best. You put one of the best years that DB ever put up in the history of this team. Come back. You're a huge reason why we went 10 games last year. You were third in defensive voting, player of the year. You were first team All-Pro last year. Here's your bonus. Thank you, God. You did great. Here's your bonus. So, to be honest with you, to me, it comes from both sides. And I think, what you said about the whole Aaron Rodgers thing, that he wouldn't rob other players from that, dude, do not underestimate how selfish, and I don't even say selfish, but how ego-driven some of these athletes are. Let's put it that way. That the littlest thing could set them off and they're gone. Just like the scenario with Xavien Howard. Like Aaron Rodgers, they all have big egos. Same thing with Tom Brady. I mean, that whole thing with Bill Belichick. It was egos. They're just, they're going to leave. Like, that's just how they are, And we've seen it over and over again in other sports, too. So, I won't underestimate that, man. I'm serious. Like, I don't think Aaron Rodgers cares if Devontae, he would just leave. And good for him. He gave the organization, 10 over a decade of his time. He won a Super Bowl there. They're not getting it done. They're making poor decisions. I'd leave too. But that's a different situation. It's a different situation. I don't even know where I'm really going with this. I've stated what I think about the whole Xavien Howard thing. I think it's, what you're saying is completely, I completely understand it. You have a reason that's a great argument. And the Dolphins, it's not like they don't have any legs to stand on when it comes to this. But at the end of the day, just pay him more money. It doesn't. We read on the last podcast who's getting paid more than him, and they're nowhere near as good as he is. Like, we can afford to pay him more. We're gonna get a huge cap space bump next year. It's not gonna take us down that much to give him a little bit of a bonus. Anyway, man, I could do a whole hour on that whole anytime I ever hear... By the way, when athletes talk on these talk shows, they're millionaires. They're millionaires. I mean, them themselves are millionaires. Talking about, we're not getting paid a fraction of what the owners... Dude, you have enough money to live 4 lifetimes, for God's sakes. What are we even talking about right now? Why are we even talking about this on ESPN? Who wants to hear this? It's ridiculous. It really is. And I do think people were they're talking about how it's different lifestyles and stuff like that. If you were in their shoes, well, I'm not in their shoes. And I don't even understand why anybody would want to hear any of this. Why? Who cares? Really, everybody's playing violins for the millionaires around the world. For the love of God. And then you have, like, dude, I wish one time someone would say something to them. But that's a whole nother thing for another day. Like, I cannot believe they just sit there and listen to that. Like, I would be like, listen, I know, well, I guess you'd get fired by ESPN if you said anything. But honestly, you would be a hero. And in today's game, in today's world, you could just start a YouTube channel and people would follow you for that. And that's the beautiful thing about today. I mean, you can kind of say things and still kind of have, like, even, like, you know, at the end of the day, you'd be fine. You probably wouldn't be getting paid as much right away, but eventually you would. I mean, how much... Anyway, I don't know what I'm talking about right now. Let's move on to the next question. This next question comes from Adrian. He says, Skaggs, I don't understand the novice fans who are so quick to cut Jakeem Grant. Returners like him are not found at a day labor pool. The reason they want him out is because he's dropped a few passes. Who cares? The guy is a legitimate threat in the return game who consistently changes field position. He's a proven vet whom, if he takes up a spot as a punt kick returner, he's well worth it. Much better than other slugs on much like other specialists like Devin Hester, Billy Johnson, and like Jason Sanders, who can win games. Cut Grant and he'll be snatched up in the next breath. I think that's why he's still on the team. If it was, honestly, I think he would. I mean, obviously he wouldn't be on the team anymore if it wasn't for that. I think that's the only thing keeping him on this team. And it's not. Listen, he was a starting receiver last year in big games and played terrible. So that's why people are mad at him, and that's why I'm mad at him. You know, he never lived up to the expectations. He was never a good slot receiver. He was inconsistent as an outside receiver. He constantly came up short in big moments. So, yeah, it's like, dude, it's the potential that he had, and he just never lived up to it. So as a receiver, yes, I can completely understand why people don't like him, and why it's frustrating to watch him. I never want to see him as a starting receiver on this team in meaningful minutes ever again. If he wants to take an end around, a speed sweep or whatever the heck he wants, then fine. As a gadget player, he's great. As a specialist, he's great. But as a receiver, no, he's not good at all. He's one of the worst starting receivers in the league. It actually baffles me that he can't get separation on a more consistent basis. So, in that regard, it's frustrating. But yes, I completely agree with you, Adrian. He's a fantastic returner. Who, at some points in his career, though, he was a little bit shaky with some of those punts in terms of muffing them and all that, and on some of those situations. But yeah, he's a fantastic returner, but he's not a good receiver. This next question comes from, and like I said, I think that's the only reason he's still on the team. This next question comes from Ender. Even though we've heard Chris Greer talk about Holland's returnability this year and Waddle's returnability this year, and he didn't have to bring that up. So Grant's got to watch himself. This next question comes from Ender. He says, Dokes, is he a 7th round steal? Who knows, man? I mean, he's a big back. He's good in pass protection. He's really good in pass protection. I would take him over Malcolm Brown any day of the week. So yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens with him. Chris has been really good at drafting players late in rounds, so we'll see. I mean, I can't really. He doesn't have anything that he does like that. I'm like, wow, like, where it makes me excited. But we'll see. This next question comes from Ender. He says, "Can you please give us your opinion on Dokes? I like him more than Malcolm Brown. I think he's great at pass protection. He's a big back. He brings something that the other running backs don't. So maybe that's his way into the team." This next question comes from Lewis. He says, "Our record through the first 5 games." I don't predict things, Lewis. I'm superstitious in that way. So I will not do that. I apologize. That's just something I've never done on this show. But anyway, that's it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. I kind of got off the rails at the end here. I just started thinking about the whole money thing, and it's like, I don't know. It is weird. It's a very odd thing that people that millionaires complain about. It's the definition of greed. It's like, how much money do you really need? And why are you this passionate about that? It's like, we get it. The owners are making billions of dollars, and they were making billions of dollars before they owned the team. And you're getting paid hundreds of millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars to play a sport. How much money do you need? Do you want $1 billion? Do you need $1 billion? You don't need it. People live every day on way less money, and they find happiness in life. I don't know what I'm even talking about anymore. Anyway, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Excuse the rants, and I will see you guys in the next one.